Yeah, good, wonderful. Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. I first want to say a very special thank you to Sina for the beautiful introduction. My wife is going to regret that I did not record the introduction, because that's her favorite part of my speeches, are Sina's introductions. Baruch Hashem. Halavai that one day, everything that Sina said will be true. Until then, I strive to live up to all of those values there. The one part that is true is that Sina is a dear friend. And if I have to say more than a dear friend, everybody who's involved in the Ḥabura in any capacity is by default a dear friend of mine. David HaMelech, King David says, Chaver ani, I am a friend of all those who have awe of you. And I view people who are affiliated with the Ḥabura in any capacity as people who are Anshe Emet, people of truth, who are on a path to learn Torah better every day, to grow in their midot and the HaShamayim. And I'm lucky to have anything to do with the group of people that is here. I want to say a very special thank you I'm replacing a Shiur tonight. Rabbi Cohen's Shiur is usually tonight, right? I'm replacing, I didn't want to, but he agreed and he gave me the platform tonight. He insisted, that's the word. And so I just want to say, Chazak Uvoch also, I appreciate that. I know what it's like to prepare regular shiurim and have someone from outside show up and steal the thunder, so I'm grateful to that. If I'm anyway saying thank yous and all of that, I want to say to Doron Schwartz, my cousin who had a Brit Milah today with him and Betsy had a baby boy today, not today, but the Brit Milah was today. Shah Tova. And to Rabbi Daniel, who's always here to help me out with everything to do with London. Thank you. I'm here for exactly one day. So I landed this morning, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I came for the Brit Milah, Vetulo. But I said, if I will have the opportunity to learn Torah with the Chevra in London, that will only make me very happy. And I reached out to Sina, and he, on a dime, was able to arrange it. So thank you for being here tonight. Can I ask you, Be'erich, I don't want to hold anyone here longer than they can. I'll do a Q&A after for anybody who wants to stay the whole night with me. But how long of a shiur do I have now? About an hour? You guys are okay with an hour? Okay. If you fall asleep, I don't throw water at anybody. It's okay. When I was getting on the airplane, I was still trying to figure out class topics for tonight. That's why you don't have source sheets. I never teach class without source sheets. But if you want, tonight you can go to shiviti.org/Ḥabura, H-A-B-U-R-A, and the source sheet will be there for tonight's class. Yeah, thank you. There will be a link on the top of that page, and it will be the source sheet. Before we get to that source sheet, perhaps a brief introduction. The first time I ever came to London to give a shiur was 2019 on my way to South Africa. I think it was 2019, right before COVID. I was on the way to South Africa to do a Shabbaton over there, and on the way I had a stopover, and just like that we arranged a shiur together here also with Sina came to pick up at the airport. And before I got on the airplane, I sent over the class title. And the class title was Sephardic Judaism is the Future of Judaism. And we pull into the Beit Midrash where I was giving the shiur, and I see a sign with my face on it, and it says, "We welcome Rabbi Yonatan Halevi." Class title: The Sephardi Approach to Halakha. And I told Sina that I'm not giving a class on that topic. Because you give a class whatever topic you want, but in London we can't name a class. Sephardic Judaism is the future of Judaism. So he didn't approve tonight's class title either. I just sent it out on my own. But tonight's shiur is going to be a case study in what I call Halachic Colonialism. And I borrowed this term from a Talmid Chacham who many years ago wrote a post about it. Doesn't want to be mentioned, so I won't mention his name. But let's start at the top. While I was on that plane, I said, what should I teach about? This week is Yom Ha'atzmaut. I know most of you are probably celebrating in the middle of the week. In my Kehillat, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut on Shabbat, because Yom Ha'atzmaut is on the 5th day of Iyar. And we celebrate on the 5th day of Iyar, regardless of when it falls out. But Yom Ha'atzmaut is this week. How can you speak and learn Torah in the week of the greatest miracle that has happened to the Jewish people in the last 2,000 years and not mention it? And so, in my way to incorporate Yom Ha'atzmaut into tonight's shiur, I'm going to change the topic. Can I get a haircut or shave my beard in honor of Sefirat HaOmer? And Sina, once this class is recorded, you tell me you cannot go online, then I'll take care of it afterwards. But for now, it's a real question. It's a valid question. It's an important question. For those of you who don't observe any mourning aspects of Sefirat HaOmer, good for you. This class then is not relevant to anybody else. For those of you who do, this is what I'm here to talk about tonight. B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. I want to analyze a story that happened in Yemen many, many, many years ago. And by looking at the teshuvah that we have from Yemen, we can understand the way that rabbinic violence works or doesn't work. And so the answer to my question will be at the end of the shiur. For right now, any Yemenites in the room? Aside from myself? Very good. Very good. Baruch Hashem. That point is probably the most important one. Sina and I had a conversation back in the day. The Ḥabura used to have a worse name. Today it's a beautiful name. And that name we spoke about, that to be Sephardi has nothing to do with where you come from. In my Kehillat, we always say Sephardic is not about where you come from, it's about where you're going. And there's a philosophy of Chachmei Sefarad. If my family is from Yemen and Morocco, I'm just as Spanish as somebody from Germany is. But we are Sephardim by virtue of the fact that the Torah of those Chachamim of Sefarad is what resonates with us. And that's the Torah that we subscribe to regardless of our personal food preferences or whether we belly dance on top of camels or not, or whether we... None of that is Sephardi and Borekas on the Shavua. It doesn't matter. Nothing is irrelevant. What's relevant is the Torah that we have, the tradition that we have. Every year I'm invited to the Sephardic Film Festival in San Diego. Every year they invite me, without fail. I'm the only Sephardic rabbi who has a Kehillat in San Diego. And every year I turn down the invitation. Because every year it's a spice shuk, and there is a camel, and there are belly dancers, and there's a guy with an oud who comes to play music. I said, how can you represent my entire tradition without one chacham, without one philosopher, without one Sephardic scientist? All of the things that our culture brought to the world has nothing to do with the spices that we ate when we lived in those countries. And so this particular community, when I'm looking around the room, I know that I'm speaking to the choir. You get it. So I don't have to belabor the point. Yemen. In Yemen, there are two communities. Anyone know what they're called? Baladi and Shami. Balad means city. Mikomim, locals from here. Sham is Syria. Very good. If you're Syrian, by the way, you know there's politics with Shamim and Chalabim and the like. But Sham is Syria. And it wonders why in Yemen there are two groups of Jews. This all had to do with Kabbalah and the influence of Shulchan Aruch in Yemen. For transparency's sake, my family is Shami. I'll explain in just a moment. The Jews of Yemen, as far as they can remember, were diehard students of the Rambam. Halachot followed the Rambam, the Siddur followed the Rambam, and that's what you know to be Baladi, is that Siddur. The Shamim are Jews who, when the Shulchan Aruch was printed, when the Siddur, the Sephardim used today, mostly influenced by the Arizal, made it to Yemen, there were Jews who jumped ship and they followed mostly Sephardic tradition. It's not a surprise that that is the case. If you recall some of my other shiurim at the Ḥabura, I've spoken how the Sephardic community, the pan-Sephardic community, always operated as an autonomous nation in exile. We always operated a government where if you got a get or a business contract or a ketubah in Morocco, you could take it to the Bedin in Syria, you could take it to the Bedin in Turkey, you could take it to the Bedin in Iraq, because all of them agreed to the same basic penal code. Once upon a time in history, that was the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. Later in history, that was unanimously the Shulchan Aruch. And for the haters of the Shulchan Aruch that sometimes float around the Jewish community, you will be hard-pressed to find for me the Bedin of any Sephardic community since the Shulchan Aruch, which the Shulchan Aruch is not the code of law. So even though there are people today who like to say, we are Sephardim, we hate the Shulchan Aruch, we're going back to Mishneh Torah, it's very nice to be a newborn Sephardi, but you have no tradition which you represent. And I say that with the full confidence of, you cannot point to me to the country that operated in the capacity and the violence against the Shulchan Aruch which exists today. You can say that there are places which didn't always accept all the rulings, they're good, like every book. In Yemen, once upon a time, before the Rambam, there was Harav Saadia Gaon. If you look in Harav Kapach's notes, in the Moreh Nevuchim, in his Mishneh Torah, about the concepts of Olam Haba, he says Harambam had to teach Torah special in Yemen because the Jews were so convinced that Rav Saadia Gaon was right that he couldn't convince them right away that he was right. The Jewish community is constantly changing, shifting, evolving. But in Yemen, the main evolution, the Jews who were loyal to the Rambam called it the original Yemenite tradition, and then the Jews who were the new Jews. They were influenced by Syria, yani Eretz Israel, the people in Israel, Tzfat. Yeah, Tzfat was sending their books of Kabbalah and Siddurim to Yemen. Some communities jumped ship and others didn't. One of the major players in that game was a Chacham by the name of Rabbi David Masharki. Have you heard of him before? He wrote a commentary on Shulchan Aruch called Shetilei Zetim, the olive saplings. Rabbi Masharki wrote a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and he was convinced that all Yemenite Jews should follow the Shulchan Aruch as part of being united with the rest of the Sephardic nation in the world. And it's important that everyone follows Shulchan Aruch, and that means that even Ashkenazim have to follow Shulchan Aruch. So on his commentary on Shulchan Aruch, he comments every halacha of Maran in Shulchan Aruch, and he ignores the Rama entirely. Because he says if we Yemenites have to give up our tradition for Shulchan Aruch, so do you in Poland. I'm not going to give in and you guys get to do whatever you want. And so he just ignores the Rama and he writes a whole commentary on Shulchan Aruch. Die-hard Shulchan Aruchist of Yemen. Obviously you had an original community of Temanim that continued to follow the Rambam. That later becomes more intense in the generation of Rav Kapach's grandfather. We'll talk about it in a minute. But one of the major Chachamim, who tonight we're going to focus on his writings, is the Maharitz. Rabbi Yechiel Salach. Rabbi Yechiel Salach was the chief rabbi, for lack of a better phrase, of the Yemenite Jewish community, especially in the headquarters of Sana'a. There, and you know there are many different Yemenite communities, and just like you have many different Moroccan communities, many different Ashkenazi communities, they're not all the same. Galicianers and Polish Jews and Hungarian Jews and Russian Jews are not all the same, even though Art Scroll calls them all Nusach Ashkenaz, but we know that history is very different than that. You know that in Morocco there was Spanish Morocco and French Morocco, and there was North and there was South and East and West, and there was not one place that did something the way that somebody else, but today all the Moroccans are convinced they were all the same once upon a time. The same thing in Yemen, different regions. In London you have a contingency of Yemenite Jews from Aden. Aden was a British port city. The Yemenite Jews there are incomparable to the Yemenite Jews where my grandfather came from, in the village of Taiz, not far from Sana'a. And if you met Habani Jews who were warriors with long hair and bodyguards for the kings of Jordan and Saudi Arabia, also completely different culturally and religiously from the other Jews in Yemen. Combined, sure, around basic tenets that made them all Yemenite Jews, but they had their own flavors and their own styles. The Maharitz, he inherits Yemen as a mess. Now, Yemen in general is a mess. The country of Yemen is a mess. Until today, it's still a mess. Yemen is not actually a country. Yemen is a conglomerate of warring Arab tribes. Everyone competing, who can be more illiterate than the next one. You're dealing with an entirely analphabetic crowd, not Jews, of non-Jews. Yemen is, whoever is the king of Yemen essentially is the one who got most of the tribes not to kill him and to work together to kill the other people. That's how Yemen works. Yemen, when you try to travel from one side of Yemen to the other, good luck, you can get killed 30 times along the road. That's like when you drive through Afghanistan. This Taliban checkpoint might let you through with a little bit of, bakshish, some bribery, but the next one is going to cut your head off just because you looked at your phone the wrong way. That's the same way that Yemen is. The Yemenite Jewish community, therefore, even though some of them were close, but they were separated by vast swaths of areas that they didn't travel, they didn't go through. So to be the chief rabbi of Yemen, I'm not sure that there really is such a term, as much as he was the chacham of his generation. And Maharitz made nobody happy. Everybody loved the Maharitz. Perhaps the most popular Yemenite rabbi who ever lived. Rabbi Dr. Ratzon Arusi, should live and be well, should be healthy, and HaKadosh should bless him with long life and good health. Harav Arusi always says that Maharitz was famous, he was popular because he was a man of compromise. Ideological rabbis usually have very small followings because they don't appeal to the masses. The masses, they're sitting around for Shabbat, Chamin, Dafina, Chulent, whatever you want to call it. They don't want to hear about Gilgulim or Rav Sadia going, Moreh Nevuchim, the Kabbalah is going to hell. They want to eat Chamin. They would leave me alone with this stuff. For the most part, it doesn't interest them. For some people, it really does. And that's all they can talk about. They're looking at the egg in the chamin, they're thinking it's round, the round is a galgal, and then they're stuck with their chamin. That's what they can do. Everything is ideological. But for most Jews, they're not that ideological. And the chachamim that try to bring the peace and to compromise with everything, even though they usually lack, I'm not going to say integrity, they lack consistency. But usually, they're very popular. Rabbi Ratzon Arusi says that's why Shulchan Aruch is so popular. It lacks consistency from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Sometimes he's Sephardi, sometimes he's French, sometimes he's... But Maran is okay. Maran, though, is busy keeping the peace, which is why that book takes on popularity. Maharitz, therefore, is the one who says, listen, anything that I can get the Jews to go back to do like the Rambam, I'm going to get them to do like the Rambam. But any minhag that is in Yemen that is already so entrenched like the Shulchan Aruch or the Kabbalists, leave it alone. If it's not harmful, leave it alone. And that's what he did. And just like that, he became the posek, capital T, of Yemen. Because he didn't make anybody upset. He made everybody upset. The Shulchan Aruch people were mad. The Rambam people were mad. But the families around the Shabbat table were very happy. Because he was a rabbi who said this is okay and that is okay, and he wrote codes of halakha and printed new sidurim, and Rabbi Maharitz was the one who brought the peace into Yemen. But that peace lasted until Harav Kapach, Kafich, his proper name. Harav Kapach, in Israel, they made him a new name. They colonized his name. In Israel, before Israel, Rabbi Kapach was the famous, we need to go everything back to the Rambam. Reject the Shulchan Aruch. Zohar was written by Christians. We need to set up a new Bet HaMidrash. The Bet HaMidrash was very popular, but very small. A minyan and a half, 2 minyanim of people that attended Harav Kapach's Bet HaKnesset. Lo alenu, the other rabbis of his town bullied him, sent him to prison. He lived a miserable life. Rabbi Kapach, his grandson, Rabbi Yosef, who came to Israel, gave us the Mishneh Torah, the Mourning Nevuchim, all the books that he republished at the will of his grandfather. But it was a violent time in Yemen. It was not simple. I have a shiur on the Dor De'ah, the Dardeim, as they call them derogatorily, and the fights about Kabbalah in Yemen. It's not for today's shiur. But you should know that I'm talking the generation right before Harav Kapach. The Maharitz is here trying to calm down the spirits of everybody in Yemen. And the one thing that's bothering the Jews in Yemen is it's Friday afternoon, and they have stubble on their face, and it's really uncomfortable to go into Shabbat itchy and scratchy, and 3 Shabbatot in, their hair is a little bit long, and it's hot in Yemen. It's not Siberia over there. It's hot, and they're sweating, and it's Shabbat, and what about Oneg Shabbat, and why can't I cut my hair now because Rabbi Akiva's students died 2,000 years? What does that have to do with anything? And how could it possibly be that I'm mourning something that I didn't do? I'm mourning something more severely than I mourn even the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Because if Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat, I don't fast. But if Sefirat HaOmer falls out on Shabbat, I'm not allowed to shave my face. By the way, it bothers me too. Look, I'm not comfortable. I don't come here with a face that looks like this or hair that looks like that. Last time I was in London was also Sefirat HaOmer. I spoke at your house. And I wanted to shave. I was traveling for a month between different countries that trip. And I was already mamash close to, Doran, when did you get married? Like Lad Bomer? Lad Bomer? Yeah. I remember that. Lad Bomer, yes? I was traveling, I was on the road, I'm going to different communities. I look like the wild wolfman's brother. I don't feel comfortable traveling like that. And I asked Harav Peretz, can I shave? And he said, I don't shave like somebody. It's a trim, I get a haircut. So I'll tell you at the end what he told me. Right now we're going to have, let's look together on the source sheet, on page 1, or page 2 in the PDF. You see Siman Ayin Vav? You see Porat Tzaddik? Sefirat HaOmer? You have that on your phones? Listen, now is your time to play Angry Birds or something. Check Facebook. Okay? Now I'm thinking that you're learning with me, and really you could just make TikTok videos, whatever you do. So good. Rabbi Yechia Salach, he's very Yemenite, in the sense that he's very curt. My grandfather, my father's father, when I would call him to ask, Saba, how you doing? Good. How you feeling? Nice. Saba, how you really doing? No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu shouldn't abandon me in my old age. Okay, Saba, tell me something else. I don't want to talk on the phone so much. You're wasting my time. Hung up the phone on me. That's my Yemenite side of the family. My Moroccan side of the family, I call them. If I don't force the phone to hang up or the battery doesn't die, I'm still on the phone. Rabbi Yechia Salach, his teshuvot are the same way. They're very short. Very, very short. Except for this teshuvah. This teshuvah is 11 pages long. And we're obviously not going to sit here and do 11 pages tonight. But I wish to go with you some of the main principles of the teshuvah. Let's start with the question. She'ela. Yes, the question. Sha'alta binyan dinim hanohagim b'mei ha'omer. You ask me about these laws that are relevant during the Omer. Shegazru, that they made a decree. Shelo listaper, that you cannot get haircuts. By the way, let's call it straight off the bat. Getting haircuts and shaving are not the same thing. Yes? But let's leave that for another moment. Im hu mitam shemetu talmidei Rabbi Akiva, they say that it's because of Rabbi Akiva's students dying. V'chi efshar shetiyeh avelutam yoter ma'avelut hamikdash v'Yerushalayim. Could it be that their avelut, their mourning is going to be more severe than the mourning over Jerusalem and the Beit HaMikdash? V'sham'ata alenu she'anu nahagnu listaper b'mei ha'omer, and you heard about us, meaning me, the Maharits, that I get haircuts during the Omer. So you wanted to know, number one, do we need to observe these customs? Number two, is it because of Rabbi Akiva? If it is, how can it be worse than the Beit HaMikdash? Number three, Rabbi, we heard that you get haircuts during the Omer, so tell us what's going on. Here's what he answers. Yikabel hanichbad et teshuvato. My honorable friend, you should receive your answer. Da yididi, you should know my friend. Ki kushyahi. It's a good question. אמנם עיקר הטעם הוא מפני שהם ימי דין וראוי להיות אדם נכנע בימים אלו. No one is actually mourning Rabbi Akiva, says Maharitz. Rather, these are days of din. We're going to talk in a second what that is. These are days of judgment. And because of that, it's proper that a person should be nichna, should be humble in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu during these days. I don't know if humble is a good word. Nichna, anyone have a good word? Submissive. Okay, should submit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in these days. לכך נהגו באותם המקומות שלא להסתפר דרך הכנעה לאותם ימי דין. And that's why people didn't get haircuts, to be in the state of הכנעה before the day in these days of judgment. וראיה לזה, what's proof is there that these days are days of judgment? שהרי מידת הדין פגעה בתלמידי רבי עקיבא בימים אלו. ולזה תלו הדבר במיתתם דרך השנה. You see that if 24,000 Torah scholars can die in a period in the Omer, it must mean that something bad happens during these days, or else not that many Talmidei Chachamim would all die at once. And it's because of days of judgment, not out of mourning. Because of the days of judgment that the Jewish people feel that they were experiencing, that they had this custom not to get haircuts. It's his own take on this. Omnam, but המנהג הזה נתפשט באיזה מקומות. This custom did spread in some places. אך במקומנו זה ארץ התימן. But in this land, interestingly says ארץ התימן and not ארץ תימן, in the land of Yemen, לא היו נוהגים כן, this was not our custom. We never mourned during Sefirat HaOmer. ומקרוב, and only very recently. How recently? כמו מם שנה, like 40 years. יצא חכם אחד מאיי הים. One chacham came to visit us from the islands of the ocean. I don't know that he actually came from the island. It just means that he was not from Yemen. Some visiting rabbi, some guest speaker, some scholar in residence. I tell my kehillat that scholars in residence, they're like hit and run drivers. They come, they speak, they leave the rabbi of the community to deal with all the chaos they left behind them. It's better you should listen to the Talmidei Chachamim that you learn with regularly, consistently. But this, what's exciting about guest speakers is that they're new. I didn't hear them last week, I'm not going to hear them next week, so there's something exciting about them. Look, it would be nice if my Bet HaKnesset, this many people decided to come for a shiur on a Monday night, right? But at the end of the day, it's more exciting when you're not from here. So this rabbi came from the islands, meaning from far away. ומדי עוברו לעירנו, and when he came to our city in Yemen, הכריח הציבור לנהוג כן. He forced the community. Forced. Listen what we mean by forced. I'll explain in a moment. He forced the community to mourn during the Omer. מיתם איסור, because he said it was forbidden. ומנעם שלא ברצונם, and he forced the community to stop getting haircuts and shaving against their will. How on earth could you get a community to do something against their will? Especially if you're just a visiting rabbi. To understand that part of the story, we're going to have to look at the next page. Just give me one moment. You know what? Let's look at the next page. Let's jump there. Go to page Nun Chet. The bottom of page Nun Chet, he says the following. You see where I am? Ve'ata amarti? You see? Ve'ata amarti. Ledaber od. I want to speak a little more about that story, says Rabbi Yichai Salech, because Shamati Omrim, I heard some people saying, דכיוון שנשיאנו, אדוננו, כבוד הרב, שלום הכהן, זכר צדיק וקדוש לברכה. This man was an important man or not an important man? A very important man. He gets so many titles in one sentence. Rabbi Shalom HaKohen, otherwise known as Al-Iraqi. He was a Yemenite Chacham. How much of a Chacham I can't tell you. The Ashkenazi rabbis refer to him as an Av Beit Hadin, but we know that he never served in that capacity in Yemen. He was like the political leader of the Jewish community in Yemen. So, Atamid Chacham, yes. He was I'm sure there's a equivalent, I don't want to say any Spanish-Portuguese words. Let's call him the Nasi, or the Nagid, if you had in Egypt such an office. He was the person who was responsible for taxing the Jews, for representing the Jews to the government. He was the man who was in charge of the Jewish community. It also helps that he was clearly very, very, very wealthy. That's usually how you get that job. Usually, you become the president of the community for two reasons. Because you're wealthy and because you want to lose your chelik in Olam Haba. That's two reasons why people become presidents of communities. in my experience, I can only tell you from my experience, because it seems the job of the president of the community is to make the life of the Talmid Chacham as miserable as he can. And if that's the job of the president, then that's a way to lose your chelik on haba. Now, if there's a president who doesn't live his life like that, then that's very special. Sina was speaking somewhere before, not a lecture. I was speaking to somebody, and he said, this rabbi is going to tell you things the way he feels about them. So it's true. I'm going to say what I'm saying is not necessarily true. You don't have to agree with me. It's how I feel about the topic. The one asked me if I had any difficult presidents in my life. So we have the story as follows. Rabbi Shalom Iraqi was the Yemenite leader of the community, and he was a major fan of the Shulchan Aruch, like over the top. Not only did he love the Shulchan Aruch, he loved the Sephardic Siddur more than the Yemenite one. And so he decided that he was going to spend every Shabbat in a different Beit HaKnesset and just bring with him new Siddurim. And he would just say, hey guys, what do you think about this Shabbat? We're going to try a new Siddur. And just like that, in a very short period of time, Rav Yosef Kapach writes in a journal that he put out, that at the end of Rabbi Shalom HaKohen's career, there were only 3 Beit Knesset left in Yemen that were not using a Sephardic Siddur. 3. The rest of them all followed the lead of Rabbi Shalom HaKohen. Rabbi Shalom HaKohen was also brilliant when it came to marketing. He was very involved in the financial success of the community. Even communities like Dammar, which are like 100 kilometers away from Tzana, he went over there and he built them a mikveh. But how do you support a mikveh in a small Jewish community? There are expenses, there's people that have to clean the water, women that have to be the balaniot. How do you do it? So he bought 3 pieces of land. In the middle was a mikveh. And on the right and the left, he rented out that property to people to have stores. And the money that came from the store on the right, it paid for the expenses of the people who clean the water in the mikveh. And the money of the store on the left, the rent, it paid for the ladies who ran the mikveh. And just like that, he had an autonomous mikveh. Didn't need any rabbis, didn't need anybody else to oversee. He was able all over Yemen to build synagogues and mikvahot that were under his jurisdiction. Similar marketing, Alav Shalom, Chacham Ovadia Yosef. How did Chacham Ovadia Yosef, in such a short lifetime, get all of the different Sephardim of the world? It doesn't matter if they were Moroccans, or they were Gibraltarians, or they were Tunisians, or Iraqis, or Persians, or all of them are now using Siddurim. Not all. I know you who don't. I know. All meaning almost everywhere else you're going to go pray are using those Siddurim. How could it be overnight, just like that? I'll tell you the story. It's very simple. Have you ever bought a book of Chacham Ovadia Yosef before? Rabbi Daniel, in your store, you don't sell them yet. Let me ask you, a volume of Peninei Halacha, how much does it cost? How much? 10 pounds. That's a good price. Okay. You go buy, tell me, you want to go buy Mishneh Torah of Rav Kapach. How much is that set of Mishneh Torah going to cost you? About 1,000 pounds? Berech, yeah. Because we buy it in the United States about $1,000 plus shipping, maybe $400, $500. Yeah, that's Mishneh Torah. You want to go buy now the set Yabia Omer of Chacham Ovadia Yosef, or you want to buy his son's Yalkut Yosef. Why? I don't know why you would, but you want to buy the whole set, yes? Now you buy the Yalkut, and then what happens? How much do you pay for the Yalkut? How much? 50 shekel a book. That went up. It used to be 30 shekel a book. Because almost all of the books of Chacham Ovadia are subsidized by the state of Israel. Which means that a young Talmid Chacham is going to go to the bookstore and has to pick between 2 sets of books, 30 shekels a book, or 99 shekels a book. Is almost always going to choose the one they can afford. Those Siddurim, I remember when my grandfather's Yemenite Beit HaKnesset, every election period, they would get new boxes of Siddurim, Machzorim, and Chumashim, all from my Ovadia Yosef. And they said, listen, you don't have to do anything with them. Just keep them under the teva. And when your books get old, why would you buy new ones? You'll just use these. And just like that, the Beit Knesset started switching over because of convenience sake. This same exact thing happened in Yemen. By the way, it's the same. Marketing runs the world. It's why Chabad takes over the world too. Content is not what they're great at. It's marketing. You can argue all you want, but nobody has managed to tick off the marketing box the way that Chabad does. And because of that, they managed to get themselves everywhere, even places that everywhere. It's a very important thing to know how to do. Rabbi Shalom HaKohen, that was his expertise. That's when this story happens. Rabbi Shalom HaKohen was the one who convinced the Jews to start mourning during the Omer. But now that you know this, and you see how much respect Maharitz is very careful to give him, I want you to read the next paragraph with me. הסכים וקיים דברי האיש שבא מאיי הים. Rabbi Shalom HaKohen heard this rabbi who came from the islands, And he said, wow, I agree with him. And because Rabbi Shalom Kohen agreed, people tell me, Ra'ui l'kayam minhag. Shelo listaper, out of kavod, out of respect to Rabbi Shalom Kohen of blessed memory, we all should continue mourning, even if we don't like it. We should do it out of deference to our great leader, Rabbi Shalom Kohen. V'an v'omar, I'm going to answer, he says. Kine modad zot b'chol ha'amon. I'm announcing this, everybody knows this, but it's public information, I want to make it more public. Ki mikodem hayom, that before today, כמו מם ה' או מם ת' שנה, like 45 or 49 years ago, היו כל הקהל נוהגים להסתפר כל ימי האומר. Everybody in Yemen got haircuts during the Omer, every day of the Omer. זולתי קצת מן הקצת, יחידים מעט לא הרבה לא ישלמו למניין 10. Except for a few who didn't, because of the influence of Shulchan Aruch. He says, but how few? There were not even a minyan of them in Yemen. A few. When I say a few that did not get haircuts during the Omer. ומדי עבור החכם הראשון פה מחננו כפי מה שהיה רגיל בעירו להחמיר שלא יסתבר. And when that Chacham came from the islands and he saw all of these Yemenite Jews, I'm going to use a contemporary Orthodox word, breaking the Omer, violating the Omer. Those are false words because the Omer has nothing to do with haircuts. We'll talk about that in a minute. He couldn't believe that all these pious Yemenite Jews were all violators of halakha. So he decided to take the law into his own hands. הקפיד על זה, he was very upset about it, ודיבר באוזני הנשיא הנזכר לאל, and he spoke to the prince, רבי שלום הכהן. ואז הנשיא בכוח שיש לו, and the נשיא, with the power, the strength that he had, גזר על הציבור למנוע תספורת בכוח ואל. He used his strength, his authority, to force the community to follow his orders, not to get haircuts. How did he force the community? הן לענוש נכסין, הן לאיסורין. He started fining them, financial penalties. And the next, he would put people in prison. You want to get a haircut during the Omer? That's a 30-day sentence. He would just throw people into prison for not mourning during the Omer. ועדיין היו אנשים מהקהל שלא נמנעו. And there still were Yemenite Jews that were stubborn enough to not listen. They were the ones who they shaved during the Omer. And there was an incident that a man, Nisim Noach Swisi, came. And then it got worse. Look on page נ"ט. ואדוננו הפיק רצונו ויעבור חיל בכל מחנה העברים לחפש מי ומי מהמסתפרים. He started sending out people to go check in all of the Jewish communities. Who are the ones that are still getting haircuts? לאסור אותם במאסר המלך. To go send them to the Muslim king's prison. You know what prison was like in Yemen? In prison in Yemen, you have to pay for prison. When Rabbi Yechiel Kapach was thrown into prison, they don't give him food or drink. He also has to pay rent to be in prison. I have a shiur, my first Mishneh Torah shiur. I speak of the life of Rabbi Yechiel Kapach in Yemen, in prison. His family had to bring him food and water and pay his rent. Like I'm staying in a hotel tonight, you have to pay? They have to pay for prison. Why should we give you free housing and food and healthcare and color TV? You can't do that in prison. So he started rounding up the Jews that shaved during the Omer and he put them in prison. וכל כך חיזק הדבר עליהם עד שנמנעו כולם. It was so scary to shave or get haircuts during the Omer that everybody started holding it back. ואפילו חכמי הדור המחזיקים בפשטי התורה והלכותיה. And even the Chachamim of the generation who followed the normal, the regular Torah. Don't mean pshat in a derogatory way. By the way, the new book Pshat that you put out, the author is here? Where does he live? New York? He did a terrific job. I read it on Shabbat, the whole book from cover to cover. But the footnotes are even better than the book. I mean, Rabbi Abba is like 4 pages, but the footnotes, it's a wonderful book. If you want to see it, I recommend that you take a look. Pshat doesn't mean simple meaning. It means those who follow regular Torah, like Talmud, Mishneh Torah. They follow those rules. לא היה בהם כוח לדבר שום דבר מזה. They had no power to speak up against Rabbi Shalom הכהן. ומוכרחים היו מפני חשש וודאי מחלוקת או לצד כבודו עליו ושלום. שלא לעמוד פיהם. They either were afraid of causing מחלוקת, or they were afraid of disrespecting, again he says, Alav Shalom, Rabbi Shalom HaKohen. Now, Rabbi Shalom HaKohen at this point is dead, right? Look how careful the Maharitz is talking about him. Very careful. So what's the question? The real question, says Maharitz, the next sentence, V'nei shoalim, so now the people are coming to ask me, I cholim ata, now that Rabbi Shalom HaKohen is dead, now, lachzor minhagam ikari, can we go back to our original minhag and get haircuts during the Omer? Now that the regime is over, Now that we're not going to get locked up for getting haircuts, can we get haircuts? The Kaimalan, there's a famous halakha. The bedvarim ba'inan, the bendarim ba'inan pi v'libo shavim. In halakha, if you make a neder, I never know, neder is a vow or an oath in English. I don't say neder. When you make a neder, if what you say in your mouth is not what you mean in your heart, it's not a real neder. When the Jews promised not to get haircuts, they obviously didn't mean it. They just were afraid. So they said it like that. So now that it's over, can they go back to their minhag? So this was the story. Rabbinic violence in Yemen. It was real violence. Even the Chachamim, who felt otherwise from Rabbi Shalom Kohen, were powerless to say anything, because the price to pay for speaking up against the authority of the local Jewish community was so frightening that they were all quiet. I'm certain that when Sina spoke about saving your marriage for Pesach, he did not mean at all that some people in this room, lo alenu, might be forced to do things in their house on Pesach that they otherwise believe are incorrect, but they do them because what's going to happen if they don't? Am I right or am I wrong? Nobody here put aluminum foil on their countertop? I tell my talmidim everywhere in the world, when I go to a home, I mean, it's not a joke what I'm telling you now. When I go to a home, a Jewish person, Shomer Shabbat, Jewish people, I go to visit them. I eat everything they serve me in their house, everything. Rambam writes, when you go to a Jewish person, they put in front of you meat or fish or cheese, you eat the food. That's our halakha. It's not a minhag, it's a halakha. That's the standard of halakha in Judaism. If anyone here was to invite me to dinner, I would eat in your house. But if I would come to your house on Pesach and see aluminum foil, I would not eat in your house. It's not a joke. I'm telling you that's not a joke, I'm telling you. Should I tell you why? Because it's obvious to me that you don't know what chametz is. Because if you were to know how chametz works, you wouldn't put aluminum foil on your countertop. And if you don't know how chametz works, it means that you don't have, in this particular area of halakha, chizkat kashrut. And if it sounds severe, what I'm saying, it's the emet. I remember I used to teach classes, the whole COVID, I was in my Bet HaKnesset alone, just me, because everybody was on Zoom. And I would be looking out the window of my Bet HaKnesset, we were on the bottom floor then, and I saw this old lady every day she was allowed, because she was elderly, she was allowed to go to the grocery store. She would drive by my Bet HaKnesset, and she was alone in her car, with all the, maybe 90 years old, all the windows rolled up, she had her knuckles on the steering wheel, she had on a face mask, and she had a plastic visor on in her car. Now, politics of COVID aside, I'm not getting stuck here on that. Whatever you do, don't do, I don't care, it doesn't matter. I'm not from those people. But if you knew how diseases were transmitted, then in your car, with the windows closed, when there's nobody allowed in the street, and a face mask, and a visor, it's obvious to me you don't know how diseases are transmitted from people. No, you would agree? So then I wouldn't go get medical advice from the person who's in her car alone like that. Just like I wouldn't eat food in a house where people tell me I don't know how chametz works. I cover up the faucet with a sock. Because it's better I say sock and not what it actually looks like, because that's Hashem Yishmo. What happens here is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You go to somebody's house, I'm Maharits, and I'm putting it out on my kitchen counter for everybody to know. How could it be? But why do you do it? I am not choshed anybody here that you do it because you think it's halakha. Because what happens when somebody comes to visit you, and then you send your kids to Jewish school, and you pay membership in the Kehillat now for many generations because you're in a place that has communities for many generations. And now you find out all of a sudden your kids get bullied in school, your wife gets picked on in the ladies section, the people they turn down the invitation to the seder at your house. All because you guys eat chametz on Pesach. Look, and I don't know how it happened in London, but United States, 2 years ago, the major hechsher of the United States decided that water bottles from Costco are chametz. You heard about this? Okay, Kirkland water is chametz. You're not allowed to drink it on Pesach, but unless you buy it before Pesach. I'm not clear how if you buy chametz before Pesach, it's okay. So my response to that was, in my Kehillat, we bake our matzot with a Kirkland water bottle. I spoke to a Talmid Chacham in London earlier today, Sina. He said, I'm not a good candidate for being a rabbi in London. We are... yeah. Baruch Hashem. Nachshon ben Minadav, he was the crazy one to jump in the sea. I'm telling you, if we are serious about Torah, and we teach our congregants about Torah, you teach them Mikra, and you teach them Mishnah, and you teach them Talmud, and you teach them Mishneh Torah, and you teach them the Shulchan Aruch, and you tell them Chametz is one of the 5 grains that has come in contact with water until it is Machmitz, until it becomes actual, then how in the world can you also tell your students the water bottles are Chametz? Or soap is Chametz? Or that your toothpaste is Chametz? Or that, I could keep going. How could it be? Lo yuman ki supa. But what's the problem? Is that we let. And why don't we speak up? Because the cost of speaking up is too high. It's too high. Not all of you have your own community. See, if they already threw me out of the community. What are you going to do? Throw me out of my own community? Nothing happened to me. Baruch Hashem, everything they did to me already, they did. Now nothing else. I lost my job. My wife lost her job. Baruch Hashem, now I'm free. And the Talmud says the only free person is Misha Osek B'Torah, somebody who involves himself with the Torah. Because if you involve yourself with the Jewish community, you're going to be a slave forever. I don't live in the Spanish Inquisition anymore. Why are you looking over your shoulders all day long? The books of the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, are not on the shelf for decoration. They're on the shelf for us to use them. And if we use them, then we can't also do the things we don't believe in. And so on that tangent of Pesach, the rabbis there are not to be judged. If they had to face prison sentences or not get a haircut, I'd understand why somebody wouldn't get a haircut. The question is, now that the reign of terror is over, can we go back to getting haircuts, Sefirat HaOmer? Is this a neder? Somebody asked me this year about kitniot. There's a gezerah, they can't eat kitniot. Can they annul a gezerah? I said, listen, it could be that you don't eat kitniot on Pesach. There's no mitzvah to eat kitniot on Pesach. There's no obligation. But to use the word gezerah irresponsibly is a problem. Because if there's a gezerah, you had to show me the bedin that made the gezerah. Who are the names of the rabbis that issued the gezerah? Where do they live? What year was it issued in? What did it include? If it's a gezerah, then how is quinoa now on the list? We were there for that gezerah too? Sesame seeds were floating around Russia last night. How do you add things? How come coffee beans didn't make it to the list? You know there was a time that potatoes were kitniot? So clearly there's a gezerah that cannot be changed, but every year it changes. And we have to follow this gezerah, they're written by an anonymous group of rabbis in a place that we don't know where they live. As you can say, I don't want to eat rice on Pesach. You could do that. Listen, if you're like us, you eat rice the whole year, you could take a break. But at the end of the day, to say gezerah, it's irresponsible. Now the Jews are being bullied. Because for 40 years you didn't get a haircut during Sefirat HaOmer, now it's a neder. Now you definitely cannot get haircuts anymore. That's why they're writing letters to Maharits. So with your permission, I'm not going to read to you the next 11 pages. I'm going to give you the 11 pages for you to read. They are much sharper than anything that I said today. But I'm going to tell you every one of those paragraphs what they say, step by step. An excellent summary of this teshuvah was put out by the son of Rabbi Dr. Ratzon Arusi, Rabbi Tzefania is his name? B'Tzefania Arusi. I don't know him. Should live in me well. He does beautiful things. Let's go through the halachic arguments one at a time, very quickly. He said, number one, there was no minhag in Yemen. So this minhag didn't exist. It's 40 years old. It can't be a minhag. Number one. Number two, many other communities didn't have this minhag, not only in Yemen. This is not something that spread out to the whole Jewish community. But many Jewish communities who did not get haircuts during Sefirat HaOmer always made sure to shave and get haircuts on Erev Shabbat. Why in Erev Shabbat? Because of 3 reasons. Reason number one, the mitzvah of respecting Shabbat, enjoying Shabbat, is from the Chachamim, from the Nevi'im. Who said Nevi'im? Az tit'anag al Adonai, v'irkavticha. You say Kiddush on Shabbat? Az tit'anag. Yeshayahu alav shalom says you have to enjoy Shabbat. Until Yeshayahu, nobody said enjoy Shabbat. Just respect. Yeshayahu said you have to enjoy Shabbat. So the enjoyment of Shabbat is a minhag nevi'im. For sure, that pushes off any rabbinic prohibition. Sorry, I have to back up. The mourning customs of Sefirat HaOmer are found in the Torah. What does the Torah say about Sefirat HaOmer? You count the Omer. What else? What kind of days are the Sefirat HaOmer? Rejoice, days of rejoicing. Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman writes in his commentary on the Torah, there were no happier days in the world than Sefirat HaOmer. Think about it, you're a farmer. What is Sefirat HaOmer? I don't know how it works in London about Yashan and Chadash, but all of the chumot that you have don't matter compared to the fact that there are Jews with kippot on the head who still eat Chadash. When Maharitz told me, I asked, should I go to America? I said, everything in America is okay. Everything except for the fact that if you go there and you're going to eat Chadash, because the OU put a kosher symbol on it, you can't leave Israel. The food that everyone eats is not kasher. The Torah says, Velechem, vekali, vecharmel, lo tochelu ad etzem hayom hazeh. Until when can you not eat any of the grains you harvested in your field? Until the Korban HaOmer is offered. So the second night of Pesach, you start counting Sefirat HaOmer. That day happens Korban HaOmer, the offering of the first grains to the Beit HaMikdash. From that day onwards, all of the grains that are sitting in your field, that were harvested, that are in your silos, you're now allowed to use them. You're allowed to sell them. For the Jewish nation, this is a tremendous time of economical success. All of this stuff that was stored, we're not allowed to eat it. We're not allowed to touch it. But Kemach Chadash, afilu be'elef lo batel lechametz, because in a month it's going to be permissible, so you can't annul it now. For the Jewish community, it's an incredible time of celebration. And for 49 days, people are busy offering their Omer offering in the Beit HaMikdash, and outside of Israel, the second day of the Omer, the third day of Sefirat Pesach and onwards. It's a tremendous time of celebration. How did that day become a day of sadness? The Mishnah doesn't mention anything about mourning during Sefirat HaOmer. The Talmud mentions that Ben Pesach la'atzeret, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died. Okay, why does it say they died? Seemingly, mipnei shelo nahagu kavod ze bazeh, because they did not properly respect each other. Interesting why we're mourning people that couldn't behave with common decency to each other. That must not be then what the Talmud means, or it does mean that, and then you have to ask the same question I just asked. The Geonim give a slightly different reason for why the students died. It makes a little more sense. One of the Geonim mentions that the students of Rabbi Akiva were students of Rabbi Akiva. They were busy teaching Torah publicly like he was. And they were all killed by the Roman Empire at this time period. And Chachamim want to say, why were they able to kill them? Must be because they had some avera that they could blame it on. You don't have to be behind that, just sharing. Now there are Geonim who mention mourning customs of Sefirat HaOmer. Whether they're actual Geonim or not is a great question. Suffice it to say that Rabbeinu HaRambam in Mishneh Torah makes no mention of mourning during Sefirat HaOmer. The Rosh makes no mention of mourning Sefirat HaOmer. The Rif makes no mention of mourning Sefirat HaOmer, even though those customs already existed in the Jewish community. They intentionally neglected to mention it in any of their halachic codes. Maran in the Shulchan Aruch does not codify mourning during Sefirat HaOmer. All he says is nohagim. There is a custom. He quotes the Tur, the son of the Rosh, and the famous Chacham, the Maharitz ibn Shu'ib, who was a Kabbalistic preacher in Tzfat at that time period, I think in Tzfat, that they said you shouldn't get haircuts during the Omer because of this time. So, how that then became it's forbidden to get haircuts in the Omer is a fantastic leap. Even Maran didn't say that. So number one, the words of the Nevi'im to enjoy Shabbat, stronger or less strong than the custom of the Omer? Much stronger, so they outweigh them, hence the reason for Shabbat. Many people get haircuts. Number two, there's the halacha by Sukkah. My two most difficult mitzvot. Drinking 4 cups of wine by the Seder. I hate wine, mamash. And sleeping in the Sukkah. I am not a camping person. My wife, should live and be well. You throw her on top of a mountain with a sleeping bag, not even on the dirt with a raccoon, and she's happy, Baruch Hashem. Me, I'm looking for where's the nearest Hilton. You know, I gotta go check in air conditioning, shower, running water. Sukkah, sleeping in the Sukkah, it's my nisan every year. I go with my Sukkah. I go with my wife. I go with my children. We all have our places in the Sukkah. We build a whole Sukkah also for the community to come sleep in the Sukkah because everyone's afraid to sleep at home. People have another Sukkah in my house to sleep in their own Sukkah. But every night, it's a miserable thing. Hamitzte'er patur min ha-sukkah. Somebody who suffers from Sukkah is exempt from the Sukkah. Says it'll be Maharitz. So somebody who suffers from Sefirat HaOmer, mourning customs, is also patur. That's how the logic goes. Now, is a mitzte'er patur from every mitzvah? No, it's almost, that's the mitzvah that they're patur from. So he's not the only Sephardic Chacham I've seen use this idea of mitzte'er patur min ha-sukkah. Rabbi Yosef Mesas has a fascinating teshuvah. I see his name and I wish I could kiss his hand. Chacham Abe Faur told me when he was very little, his father would take him to Rabbi Yosef Mesas, and Rabbi Yosef Mesas would put him on his lap, and he would say Mishnayot out loud for Rabbi Yosef Mesas. He'd get some kind of treat from him or something. It was a generation of Chachamim of yesterday. They don't make them like that anymore. Rabbi Yosef Masas, they asked them about a couple after 10 years. Halakha says they have children, they have to get divorced. And the couple couldn't have children. They want to know. Or they should marry a second wife. For most women, that would be then, let's get divorced. So here, they asked them, do we have to do it? Rabbi Yosef Masas says, a mitzta'er is patur min sukkah. Somebody who suffers is exempt from the sukkah. Why would a person, it said yesterday, he says in fact, yesterday people didn't get married for love. People got married because their parents set them up. There's two single people in the same village. They gave a goat and a camel, and they were married. He said, today, though, till you find the right person, and you look for them, him or her across the world, you marry them, and you set up a house together, and you love each other, to force someone to separate just because they can't have kids, it's a horrible thing. He has a whole teshuvah, beautiful teshuvah that Rabbi Yosef wrote about it. But again, the proof he brings of mitzvah, patur min sukkah, I'm not sure how much water it holds in a court of law, just that the idea is a true idea. Number 3, in the laws of mourning, even though the laws of mourning have biblical roots to them, they're all in the status of hilchot derabanan, rabbinic laws. And therefore the law in the Talmud is always halakha k'divrei hamekel. We're always lenient by the laws of mourning. So here, and even if the laws of avelut, of mourning, Sefirat HaOmer, are real laws of mourning, you could always follow whichever is the most lenient opinion that exists out there. Because, that's by a real derabanan. This is not even derabanan. Next. He says that which Maran says that there's a custom not to get a haircut during the Omer. He says the only reason Maran wrote that halakha, listen very carefully. Don't tell it to your local Sephardic rabbi. A Yemenite rabbi said it. The only reason Maran wrote it is because in order to annul that neder, you have to do hatarat nedarim with charata, a legal procedure. Because it has the status of a real neder in some capacity, if you want to get haircuts during the Omer, and until now you didn't get haircuts during the Omer, you have to do charata in front of a bedin of 3. And then you get haircuts during the Omer. Maran writes the same exact thing regarding which other minhag, do you know? It's like the Omer. Which other time period people are mourning in? The 3 weeks, 9 days, Shavua, Shechal Bo. You know there are different minhagim. Maran writes 3 minhagim in Shulchan Aruch. Maran says some people do not eat meat from 17th of Tammuz until the 9th of Av. Some people don't eat meat from Rosh Chodesh until the 9th of Av. Some people don't eat meat the week that Tisha B'Av falls in, and he doesn't mention, but the original halakha is only not to eat meat in the meal right before Tisha B'Av. Yeah, that's the actual halakha. That's the law. Now, Maran writes, what if a person needs to eat meat, or they want to eat meat during the Omer? They feel like they need more meat in their diet, they're not feeling so well, they're unhealthy. They want to eat meat, but they have, not the Omer, and then 3 weeks. But they have already many years this custom, they don't do it. So Maran says they just have to do charata in front of, they have to do hatarat with charata, and they're exempt. So everybody who hates on Maran for in codifying this custom of not eating meat, they never read the Shulchan Aruch and the laws of vows where he says it's an easy thing to get rid of. You just have to know how to do it. That's all. That's why he mentions it. Next step, he says already from the days of Rabbi David Masharki, the Shulchan Aruch proponent, he told people to get haircuts on Erev Shabbat against Shulchan Aruch. He said Maran only quoted a custom, but not that you should actually do it. For honor of Shabbat, the person should get a haircut, should go in to Shabbat looking good. All of this fear of lotit godedu, you can't do different than the rest of the community. You know this halakha? Torah says lotit godedu, what does it mean? You can't make gashes, don't rip out a piece of your hair. It's the same pasuk about mourning for Kohanim. Chachamim learn from here, you shouldn't make lo ta'asu agudot, don't make separate groups. He says that if it applies in a community that's not homogeneous, is one thing. But it definitely doesn't apply to things that are not actually halachot. It's just someone made a custom, doesn't mean that you can't let it go to do for that custom. What else? There are always some people that got haircuts during the Omer, which shows you that this custom never took off in the whole community. A minhag that is forced on people through violence, says Rabbi Maharitz, is not a real minhag. It's not a neder if someone forced you to do something. And therefore, all the minhagim that you might do in your homes because someone forced you to do them, they're not real minhagim either. He says the fact that rabbis are silent never teaches you anything. The fact that all the rabbis of Yemen were silent just tells you they were too scared. Scared for their jobs, scared for their lives, scared for their families. They're scared. You could have a good question whether leaders of community should be scared of anybody. That's a different question. But he says the fact that they were silent does not now make it a binding minhag on me. What else? He says there are entire halachot against mourning on Shabbat. How could you then mourn the Omer during Shabbat when there's not even a halakha. Maybe another one. Have you heard of the Radbaz before? Rabbi David ben Zimra was the rabbi in Egypt. He then moved to Tzfat and became a rabbi in Tzfat. Who gave him his job? Maran. Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo respected the Radbaz so much, he put him as the head of the yeshiva. Radbaz said Maran is not correct in this halakha. You should get haircuts during Sefirat HaOmer. Says Maharitz, I choose to respect the rabbi that Maran respected. That's an interesting idea. He quotes, I think it's the Radbaz, don't hold me to it, it's in the notes, who calls the customs of mourning during Sefirat HaOmer, I'm going to quote you, minhag batel be'alma. It's a silly, nonsensical custom. Like it's a very light custom. And he says, how do you know that's true? Because you see that any excuse that people have to get haircuts during the Omer, they do. Famous example of Ashkenazim getting haircuts during the Omer, tell me. Okay, wait, hold on, wait to get there. Lag BaOmer, if it falls out on? If it falls out on Sunday, Omer writes, the Shulchan Aruch, that they should get haircuts on Friday, so as not to disrespect Shabbat. Says Maharitz, then all the other Shabbats I can disrespect, except for the one that has Lag BaOmer after it? He says, you see from there that in general the consensus among the Chachamim is any good excuse, Brit Milah, Pidyon, any good excuse to not mourn in Sefirat HaOmer, they jumped on it. Which tells you what they really feel about Sefirat HaOmer. And even though Mori Harav was not from Yemen, whenever I asked him about getting haircuts, shaving during the Omer, he would say, Maran said it's a minhag. I said, and any good reason you have not to listen is okay. When I asked him about Yom HaAtzmaut, he says, of course. Like that's better than just a good reason. That's a terrific reason. And that brings me to last year when I came to visit London. I lost my rabbi and teacher in August of last year. And this is the first time I'm teaching in London without my rabbi being in the world. And I know that some people may not understand the connection between a rabbi and a talmid. And I know that I definitely get some slack from it, from some people who view themselves as my earlier newborns of Aradim. But to teach Torah in a world where there's less light is very difficult. When I got on the phone with Mori Harav before I flew here, I said, Harav, I'm flying through a number of countries, a number of communities. I don't like the way that I look, I'm traveling, I don't like it. Can I get a haircut? He said, of course you can, but you shouldn't do it. I said, why? He said, because you told me you're going to London. I said, yeah, what does that have to do with anything? He says, good advice. He says, good advice is when you go to places where sometimes the rabbi, I'm going to say very gently, the rabbis might not agree with your halachic opinions. Don't give them excuses to fight with you more than they need to. And I said, Arav, I feel again like I'm under the violence of other people, not London, in general. That I'm doing something that I don't want to do it because someone else is making me do it. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all. Our rabbis call that word ones, a violation of myself. It feels violating to do something I don't want to do because someone's making me do it. There's a halakha by kibud avayim about hitting one's child. Don't hit your children, not a good thing. It's not. But there's a biblical prohibition of hitting your child when they hit a certain age, no pun intended, when they can hit you back. Because now you're violating the halakha of lifnei iver lo titen michshol. You're putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person. A person who hits their parents, lo alin, what the Torah says about them is horrible. Why are they hitting you? Because you hit them. And they're old enough to be able to hit you back. And you caused them to violate that biblical prohibition. Sometimes I feel that this whole teshuvah is really just a lesson in what happens when Jewish customs and norms are forced on people in ways that are entirely unacceptable. I mentioned Chacham Faur earlier. I'm going to mention him now. In his book, Horizontal Society, he speaks about an idea called gentle persuasion. Chachamim throughout the ages, no matter where they lived, no matter which communities they came from, always argued with each other, Always. Find me the community where rabbis didn't argue. I'll show you that neither of them were rabbis. In a place where there are no, I can quote you, I was here once and I saw a Breslov book floating around here. I think I can quote Breslov here, no? Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said that if you go to a city, don't be choshed me, okay? If you go to a city and you see that everybody is at peace in the city, all the Tamnei Chamim, you should know that there's no Baghdad in the city. There's nobody who has any intelligence in the city. It's a thing. Tamnei Chamim argue because they believe in what they teach. They believe in what they write about and they talk about. But the way in which you argue, divrei chachamim, benachat nishmaim. The words of our chachamim are heard benachat, gently, kindly. Disagree all you want, but to lock people in prison, that's not a normal disagreement. To put financial penalties on people, that's not normal. My student called me Thursday. He went to a school to pick up his kids. He saw a 6th grade girl sitting on the curb crying. He knows her, he knows the family. He came over and asked her, what happened, what's going on? She came to school and they looked at her skirt. It's a non-Orthodox school, don't jump on me, I'm in some Beis Yaakov in Williamsburg, okay? The teacher said, your skirt is too short, let's measure it. In front of the whole class, took out a ruler, measured her skirt. Not long enough, sent her to the front curb of the school to wait for her parents to pick her up. She's sitting on the curb crying. But you want to know why this person is going to hate rabbis and Torah and mitzvot? It's because of idiots like that. First off, in general, I'm not clear why rabbis are measuring anything that have to do with girls. That's a violation of tzniut. For sure, that one is. Yeah. I tell women all the time, if you go to shiur and the rabbi is teaching you about tzniut, just get up and leave because that's the most not sanua thing the rabbi can do. It's not a normal reality that's what's happening. But to force, you have some kind of school requirement, some kind of religious requirement. Force belongs to all the religions in the world. Not ours. Not ours. Is beating up my child the easiest way to get them to listen to me? Absolutely. It's also the worst way. As soon as they can, they will run away from you, slam the door in your face, never look back, and essentially you've also ruined their life because probably they're going to be sitting in therapy for the rest of their life. There are people who still think that a normal way to operate halachic conversations inside of the Jewish community is through violence. The violence might not be prison. The violence might not be financial penalties, bullying of people in the community. You come to Bet HaKnesset and you follow the Rambam, you follow Shulchan Aruch, you learn halakha regularly, and someone in the community still has the audacity to say things about you, horrible things about you, as if you don't have Yirat Shamayim, as if you don't follow halakha. That's an unacceptable reality. It's an unacceptable thing to do. You never heard that there are Jewish people who observe halakha different than you? It's a new thing for you? Somebody comes to your community, they're Ashkenazim, they do something different. Well, you can't do it like that. Why not? That's how they do it. Leave them alone. You want to convince them? Sit down, take a book, so let's learn some Torah together. But to make rules, to bully people, to hurt people, to oppress people, Rabbeinu Machia writes, you can say Lashon Hara even with your hand. Sometimes you mention a rabbi's name. So, Lashon Hara. Because you're trying to say everything that those people stand for, like that. A person has to be careful. And what's the ultimate effect of rabbinic violence? As soon as those bullies are dead, everybody's trying to go back to what they were doing before. Because if those rabbis thought that what they were doing was making everlasting change in the Jewish community, as soon as they drop dead, everybody's trying to run away from them. And it's a horrible legacy to leave behind. It's the Chachamim who, when they die, all we're saying is, if only they were here, if only we could ask them this question. I'm reading their books today. How come when they were alive, I didn't go see them? I gave a shiur somewhere recently, I don't want to tell you where. I asked people, anybody here was an adult in the year 2000? Yeah? Yeah? You know how Rav Kapach was still alive in the year 2000? You know Rabbi Shalom Iraqi was still alive in the year 2000? Chacham Mordechai Eliyahu was still alive in the year 2000? Chacham Porat Yosef? Chacham Faur? And yet how many of us chose, speaking of us, I'm including myself, to go learn Torah from the violent bullies instead of to go to learn Torah from the people, we waited for them to die, and then we cry, oh, what will be with them? What's going to be with their Torah? There's still Chachamim who are alive today. Still Chachamim who teach Torah. And I want to end off with Divrei Shevach, with words of praise. The Ḥabura, when I look at it, I don't know if Sina's still here, he might have gone. You could tell him I said it. And sometimes they print a journal or a book and they have past, present, future. Our teachers and our students. And sometimes I'm surprised they put me in the teacher section. I'm like, oh, Hashem. I get it when I see the names of other Chachamim that are there. I see Rabbi Dweck, should live and be well. I see Rabbi Yitzchak Berdugo, should live and be well. I see Rabbi Yosef, Zarnigian, I see Rabbi Abe Faur. I'm not skipping anybody's name. I'm just telling you names I see. I say, how lucky I am to be sitting with this group of Chachamim. And then I say to myself, what do we all have in common with each other? Because if you would put myself and Rabbi Dweck and Rabbi Faur and Junior and Rabbi, not Junior, but the son, and you would put Rabbi Yosef Zarnigian, Rabbi Yitzchak Berdugo, put us all at the table, Dayan Livnad, all of the, put us in the table. I'm not sure that we would all agree on any one given topic. I'm sure that if you've gone to their shiurim, there are things that I said tonight they would never say. But the one thing I'm certain about is that all of the Chachamim that are in that category, all of the ones that you put into the group of your teachers, are all people who deracheha dachei noam v'chol netivotei shalom. That when they teach Torah, they do it out of a very pleasant and very beautiful and very peaceful place. That if they were all to sit at the table, there would be no fighting, there would be no screaming, there would be no shouting. There would just be very intense Jewish conversation with an agreement to hug each other and then go back to write more journals next year. That's something very special. Because most people don't have that opportunity. Most people don't have an opportunity to learn Torah that's not inside of some echo chamber that's always saying the same things over and over again. I know there are things that I've taught over the years that some members of the Ḥabura like more and some who like less, and some of them like certain ones more than others. I'm grateful to be given the platform. I'm grateful that you and all of the people around the world that are involved with this, but especially here in this very sensitive place that is called London, have managed to create a place where all of you can come and you can talk, you can learn, you can engage, you can hear a shiur that you don't agree with. And I'm certain that none of the rabbis in the Ḥabura would ever be upset that you don't agree with them. In fact, I'm really excited when people call me after shiur and say, I liked your class, a great delivery, I disagree on A, B, C, D. That makes me very happy. It's a source of nachat for me. I'm so happy that you have your own opinion. It will be very scary for me. I tell my Kehillat standing all the time, if I walked into a room, my wife, her side of the family is Hasidim. When I go visit the Hasidic side of the community, if I were to walk into the Beit HaKnesset, my Beit HaKnesset, and everybody dressed like me on Shabbat, I would be so weirded out. I'd be like I'm in a room full of creeps. I'm like, why are you all dressing like me? Why are we all dressing like each other? What is that? Are you crazy people? What a Beit HaKnesset to me? All of you all decided that on Shabbat you want to look the same? It's not normal. All your talitot are the same? All your tefillin bags are the same? That's a crazy thing, but that's a norm in most Jewish communities. You look around the room and you see, this room is what Chachamim say in the Talmud. Kashem she'en partzufehen. Just like their faces are not similar, kach en deotehen shavot. So too, their opinions are not the same. So why are you all in the same room? I'm ending where I started. Because you are Anshe Emet. You are good people, who are truthful people, who don't think that you have a monopoly on the truth, and it doesn't stop you from your whole life trying to learn more and to grow more and be better. And so if I can end off with one sentence, Daniel, I sent you a text message to your phone. Can I read it from your phone? There's one source. Somebody has to donate to the Ḥabura 3 volumes, Chemda Genuzav Rabbi David Shalush, because I couldn't find it. That's my teshuvah. So my phone is recording, so I sent it here. Rabbi David Shalush, he wrote one sentence, and with this in my shiur. Rabbi David Shalush was the chief rabbi of Netanya, Alav Shalom, also was alive in our lifetime. Ra'ui v'hagun chachmei Israel. It's very worthwhile for the sages of Israel. Bimkom lechoz batafel. Instead of holding on to the less important things. B'chumrat hatiglachat b'mei HaOmer. By having conversations about whether you can shave during the Omer or not. So my entire shiur. Instead of that, להקדיש את ימי העומר. To dedicate the days of the Omer, לימים של תוכחה והטפת מוסר. To make them days of rebuke, of teaching proper musar to people. על גודל עוון שנאת חינם וחילול השם, on the great sins of baseless hatred, of desecration of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, rechilut, speaking horribly about each other, lashon hara, chanufa, flattery, v'sheker, lying, mirma, cheating, halbanat panim barabim, בעיתונים, embarrassing people in public, especially in the newspapers. ונראה שלשם כך תקנו קדמוננו ללמוד פרקי אבות בין פסח לעצרת. Because of that is our minhag. My kehillat for sure, every Shabbat between Pesach and Shavuot, we read a chapter per Kehillat as the kehillat in a special tune. Moshe kibel Torah mesinai. We read together the whole kehillat. Why? It's a time to do teshuvah, to focus on if the students of Rabbi Akiva might have died because of bad things, so instead of not getting haircuts, who cares about the haircuts? Stop doing the things that caused them to die. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, so we can't listen to music unless some guy does a sium on some random masechet of mishnayot in the restaurant, and then we can all have ribeye steaks. Instead of saying, why was the Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Because of these problems that I cannot follow the Mishneh Torah or the Shulchan Aruch and live at peace inside of the Jewish community. I can't believe in the Torah like the Moreh Nevuchim, or like Rav Saadia Gaon, like Rabbeinu Avraham ben Rambam, like Chovot HaLevavot. I can't do it or else I'm persecuted for it. That's what we should teach about. That's why the rabbis told us to learn musar. שכולם חוכמה ומוסר להתנהגות בין אדם למקום ובין אדם לחברו. Our rabbis instituted. What do you do during Pesach and Atzeret? Not that you don't get haircuts. Not that you have to listen to some horrible a cappella music. Horrible, guys, horrible. By the way, maybe you should listen to it because it's a chuban abayit. It's like yeah, it's horrible. I'm embarrassed and I see it. I'm like, wow, those guys, they put their faces in public. We have, this is my opinion. Again, you don't have to agree with my opinion. At the end of the day, what's the point of this time period? To not fall into the same traps that Am Yisrael falls in over and over and over again. By not allowing each other to live according to halakha, according to the Torah, by persecuting not just Am Yisrael, but the chachamim of Am Yisrael. Horrible things happen. And this group of people, you have created a space where chachamim like myself, I know that there may be nowhere else that I could speak aside from my kehillat and right here. And I'm very grateful to you for that. I want you for 1 minute to just be proud of yourself. I thank you for the opportunity to learn Torah tonight. I'm here for as long as anybody has any questions or comments about any topic. I'm willing to stick around. If anyone needs to go, it's a pleasure. I see some faces I didn't get to properly greet. I want to say I'm so happy to see you. Mezrat Hashem. Hope to have many opportunities to learn Torah together. On behalf of my wife, the Rabbinic sends her best regards. If she did not have 6 children at home, she would have come with me on a one-day trip to London. Also, she really wanted to be here and to see everybody and to say Shalom Iraqi. But on her behalf, I want to say thank you so much for creating this space. Thank you so much for learning Torah together. Asherchem, asher chelkechem, ta'alu ma'ala ma'ala b'Torah v'yirat shamayim. Keep going higher and higher and higher in the way of truth, in the way of emet, in the way of getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'ezrat Hashem yitbarach. Let's go to mitzvot. Last night was how many nights to the Omer? I don't know which day I'm in. Last night was 15. Yes. Okay, who counted the Omer already? Can we count the Omer together? 1 second. Oh, we can do Arvit. But I want to do a Q&A, so I don't want to ruin the Q&A with Arvit. 1 second, can I just count Omer for a second? It's a mitzvah. Yeah. You're going to tell me Arvit is not a mitzvah? I got it, I heard. That's a big book. You said last night was 15? ברשות מוריי ורבותיי, ברוך אתה, אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו על ספירת העומר. היום 16 יום לעומר, שם 2 שבועות ו2 ימים, אך מה נבנה בית המקדש ויחזיר עבודה למקומה במהרה בימינו, אמן. Amen.